Some people never yell. They ask a question light as air yet heavy enough to keep you awake all night wondering, am I too sensitive? Was I really wrong? And slowly they don't need to lie to you. They make you stop believing in yourself. I once fell into that game. There were no arguments, no insults, only questions that sounded caring. What's wrong? You're overthinking again. Don't you trust me? Each question was like a thread wrapping tighter around my mind until I couldn't tell which feelings were real or were only creations of my own doubt. Marcus Aurelius once said, "No one can hurt you unless you permit them." And I realized manipulators don't take that permission through force, but through deliberate gentleness. They don't need to put you down. They only need to make you doubt your heart. The moment you start apologizing for your own feelings, they've already won. Stoicism teaches that calm isn't silence, it's clarity. And when you see clearly, every game loses its power. In this video, we'll discuss 5 questions liars use to manipulate you. They sound harmless, but each is a subtle trap that slowly makes you lose yourself. I'll show you how a Stoic would respond, not with anger, but with absolute awareness. If you've ever been led on, ever asked yourself, am I crazy? Stay until the end of this video. After today, you won't answer the same way again. And if you're hearing this now, pause for a second, take a deep breath and write in the comments, I choose clarity. Because when you select clarity, no one can manipulate you anymore. Now let's begin with the first question, the simplest yet most dangerous one. It doesn't attack with anger but with softness. Why are you so sensitive? Question 1. Why are you so sensitive? There was a time when I heard this question so often that it became an echo in my head. Why are you so sensitive? At first I laughed. It was a casual comment. But over time, each time I heard it, I felt myself shrink, a little fall quieter, and eventually begin to doubt my emotions. I didn't realize that in that very moment, I had let someone step into my mind without resistance. Manipulators don't always lie with words. They plant seeds of doubt, then patiently wait for you to grow a forest of self-questioning. They make you believe that your emotions are mistakes, that you're weak, overreacting, irrational. But in truth, sensitivity allows you to see what others intentionally ignore. It's intuition, the early warning system within you. I was once in a relationship like that. Every time I felt uneasy, she would smile and say, "You're overreacting again." I stayed quiet, not wanting to make things worse. But the more silent I became, the further I drifted from myself. I stopped trusting my real feelings and started measuring myself by someone else's standards. One day, I realized I no longer knew what made me happy or sad. I only knew how to react in ways that wouldn't get me labeled as too sensitive. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone angers you, understand that they are testing your ability to remain calm." Anger, sadness, pain, they are not enemies. They are signals. The Stoics never deny emotion. They step back, observe it, and let it pass. Their calm doesn't come from shutting feelings off, but from understanding them. They know when emotion is real, and when it's a game someone else is playing. I remember once at work a colleague told me, "You're being too sensitive." I was joking. I paused for a few seconds, took a deep breath and said slowly, "I'm not sensitive, I'm just paying attention." The room went quiet, because when you answer with composure, others can no longer hide behind a gentle tone. That sentence wasn't defiance. It was reclaiming the right to define my own emotions. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And manipulators know this better than anyone. They plant the seed of imagination that you're weak, overreacting wrong. Once you believe them, Your pain no longer comes from their actions, but from the story you tell yourself. That's their game. Not to break you, but to make you doubt yourself until you fall apart. So when someone asks you, "Why are you so sensitive?" don't react, don't laugh to ease the tension or explain. Pause for a few seconds. Observe them. What are they testing? What are they hiding behind that question? Your stillness will unbalance them, because their game only works if you play. When you stand still, the game collapses. Sensitivity is not weakness. It's awareness. A Stoic doesn't kill emotion. They master it like a swordsman who knows when to strike and when to lower his blade. Your feelings are signals, not sentences. Let them guide you toward truth, not shame. And if someone smiles and asks, "Why are you so sensitive?" you can smile back calmly but firmly and say, "No, I'm just seeing what you choose to ignore." But they will change their strategy when they realize they can no longer deceive you through emotion. They'll no longer attack your feelings. They'll reach deeper into your trust. And that's when they'll ask, "Don't you trust me?" Question 2. Don't you trust me? This question usually comes when they realize you've begun to stand firm in your emotions. When gentleness no longer sways you, they shift their strategy this time. They reach for something more profound. Trust. Don't you trust me? It sounds like a soft reproach, but it's a chain designed to make you feel guilty for asking questions. I once heard this from someone very close to me. I only wanted to clarify something small, but instead of an answer, I got a sad look and a quiet voice. "You don't trust me." In that moment, I felt like a betrayer. I forgot that trust isn't a gift to be handed over. It's the result of time and truth. Manipulators know one thing well. Humans fear disappointing others. They use that very kindness to keep you silent. Don't you trust me? It isn't a question. It's an accusation wrapped in tenderness. It pushes you into proving your loyalty instead of them demonstrating their honesty. And the moment you start explaining, they've already won. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Truth never fears investigation." Honest people don't need your belief. Their actions speak for themselves. But liars are different. They want your trust before the truth, so they can use that trust against you. The Stoics understood trust as a virtue, but blind trust is foolishness. Absolute trust doesn't need protection because it stands on truth. I remember once at work, a colleague said, "You don't trust me." I said, "It's fine." I looked at him and replied calmly, "I trust you, but I'll still verify." The room went silent, because when you speak with composure, no one can accuse you of doubt. Trust isn't surrender, it's rational discernment. Epictetus once said, "No one can enslave you unless you hand them the chain." When you give away your trust too early, you're giving away that chain. Trust is a bridge, but not everyone deserves to cross it. Remember, trustworthy people never demand trust. They repeat the truth until you feel it without asking for it. So if someone looks at you and says, "Don't you trust me?" take a deep breath, keep your gaze steady, and reply slowly, "I trust the truth, not promises." Once you say it, you'll feel lighter, because when you choose truth, you no longer fear losing anyone. And when they realize they can no longer control you through guilt or trust, they'll try a new tactic. They'll confuse you, push you into defense, and make you step out of the observer's stance and into the role of the accused. They'll look straight at you, calm but sharp, and say, "Are you accusing me?" Question 3. Are you accusing me? This question appears when the manipulator senses that you've begun to see the truth. When they can no longer make you doubt your emotions and trust no longer keeps you silent, they try something else. They make you feel guilty for seeing clearly. Are you accusing me? It is not a question meant to find an answer. It's a tactic to shift positions. One moment you're the observer, the next you're apologizing. I've been in that situation before. One evening I asked someone close to me if there was something they hadn't told me. She looked at me, not angry, just sad, and said softly, "Are you accusing me?" I immediately lowered my voice, trying to explain that I only wanted to understand. But in that moment I realized I had stepped out of the light of truth and into the shadow of emotion. I was no longer searching for clarity. I was trying to protect my image in someone else's eyes. Manipulators know that what humans fear most is being seen as the bad one. They use that fear to control you. They don't need to prove they're right. They need to make you afraid of being misunderstood. And the moment you start explaining, they know you're caught. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Let silence be your answer to nonsense." The Stoics understood that silence isn't surrender, it's the deepest form of self-control. I've learned that before you respond, pause for 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds are where you reclaim your power. In that silence, the other person reveals themselves. I often reply calmly, "I'm not accusing, I want to understand." That sentence isn't about winning, but keeping your heart from being dragged into someone else's storm. Seneca once reminded us that the wise do not react to insults. They observe them. Observation, not reaction, is what sets you apart. Because when you don't respond the way they expect, their game collapses. They no longer know who to fight because you've stepped out of the board entirely. If you've ever been pushed into that corner, accused simply for wanting to understand, write in the comments below, "I seek truth, not blame." A simple sentence, but it reminds you that seeking truth is never a crime. It's the right of a free mind. Because what manipulators fear most is not accusation. It's the calm gaze that doesn't react, doesn't rage, sees through. When you hold that stillness, you no longer need to prove anything. The truth will do the rest. And when they realize even defensiveness can't shake you, they'll shift tactics again. This time they'll wear exhaustion, sigh deeply, and speak softly. Can't we move on? Question 4. Can't we move on? When all the excuses run dry and their defenses no longer work, manipulators change roles. They stop attacking and start pleading for peace. Come on, can't we move on? It sounds mature, like a voice of reason, but it's a deliberate form of avoidance. It doesn't seek peace, it seeks to bury the truth before it can be seen. I once heard this when I was close to uncovering every piece of the truth. When I asked if there was something you were hiding, she sighed. Can't we move on? That sentence carried fatigue, warmth, and guilt enough to silence me. I stayed quiet because I was afraid of hurting her, fearful of creating more conflict. But in that silence, the truth was quietly buried. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And he never added, "unless it's uncomfortable." The Stoics knew that real peace doesn't come from avoidance, but from facing what we're afraid to see. Moving on was a sign of maturity, but after many times I realized it was often just a refined form of self-betrayal. When you forgive before you understand, you teach others that they can repeat their mistakes without consequence. Forgiveness should never come from exhaustion, only from clarity. If someone ever says, "Can't we move on?" pause. Please take a deep breath. Look at them and say, "I will, but only when I understand." That's not harshness. It's honesty, because kindness cannot exist if it's built on avoidance. Seneca once said, "No one heals by hiding their wound. When you face it, it begins to heal. When you hide it, it only sinks deeper." So if someone wants to close the story while you're still bleeding, disagree too quickly. True peace doesn't come when others are quiet, but when there's nothing left inside you to hide from. If you've ever had to choose between false peace and painful truth, write in the comments. I choose truth even when it hurts, because in truth you reclaim your self-respect. And when they see guilt, pity, and the plea for peace no longer soften you, they'll use their final move, which strikes deeper than guilt or trust. Your identity. Their voice will soften, tinged with regret. They'll look at you for a long moment, then quietly say, "You've changed." Question 5. You've changed. This is the final line in the manipulator's playbook, no longer framed as a question but spoken with deliberate disappointment. You've changed. It sounds harmless, but beneath it lies a subtle accusation. You're the reason things fell apart, because you're no longer easy to control. I remember the first time I heard those words. It wasn't said angrily, but in a quiet, ordinary conversation. "You've changed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stayed silent. A part of me wanted to explain, to prove that I was still the same, still caring, still gentle. But another part of me knew I wasn't the same person they could so easily shape anymore. When manipulators say, "You've changed," it's not sadness they're expressing, it's the loss of control. They miss the version of you who forgave too easily, stayed quiet to keep the peace, and agreed to avoid conflict. Now, as you begin setting boundaries, saying no or stepping back to protect yourself, they feel deprived of something they thought belonged to them: the right to define who you are. Epictetus once wrote that no man is free and is not a master of himself. When you live to please others, you live inside the cage of their expectations. Change is not betrayal, it's a return. You're not becoming someone new. You're returning to who you truly are after years of being what others needed you to be. I used to apologize for changing. I tried to go back to restore peace. But one day, I realized that if someone only loves the weaker version of you, they never truly loved you. Because real love doesn't fear evolution, it grows with you. If someone looks at you and says, "You've changed," smile softly. Don't defend, don't get angry, just speak calmly, "Yes, I've altered toward the truth," nothing more. Because when you say it with peace, the world will understand that you don't need permission to evolve. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us to be our best selves and let others adjust to it. The Stoics never feared being misunderstood for outgrowing their old selves. They understood that not everyone is meant to walk with you to the end, and that isn't a loss, it's purification. If someone has ever said to you, "You've changed," with that quiet sadness, write in the comments, "I changed for peace, not approval." Because change is not the end, it's the moment you finally begin living in truth. And when you've walked through all 5 questions, from denied emotions to tested trust, to planted guilt, to buried truth, and finally to the reshaped identity, you'll see what the Stoics understood 2,000 years ago. Every form of manipulation has only one weakness: awareness. And that brings us to the final chapter, the lesson of calm. Calmness, the final fortress. When you've gone through all 5 questions, you begin to see the game was never about words, but the rhythm of your reactions. Manipulators only have power when you're in a hurry. To prove, to explain, to protect the image others have of you. But the moment you pause, breathe, and observe, they have nothing to hold on to. I used to think calmness was weakness. I used to fear that people would think I'd lost it if I didn't react. But Stoicism taught me that calmness isn't silence born of fear, it's silence born of clarity. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like the rock against which the waves crash, yet it stands firm and tames the sea's fury." Calmness doesn't kill emotion. It simply returns it to its rightful place under the guidance of reason. When you are calm, you stop chasing other people's questions. You begin asking your own. Am I acting out of fear or out of truth? Am I trying to prove something or just living what I know is right? Questions like these free your mind, because no one can manipulate a person who knows what they're doing and why. Seneca once said, "No one can take your peace from you unless you give it away." And that is the final lesson. Every manipulative question loses its force when you stay still in the storm. Why are you so sensitive? You smile. Don't you trust me? You look straight steady. Are you accusing me? You take a deep breath and stay silent. Can't we move on? You answer we can when the truth is clear. You've changed. You nod. Yes, I've changed because I'm at peace. Calmness is not the destination. It's the final fortress where no one can enter without opening the gate. It's the quiet strength the Stoics spent their lives mastering. And when you live within that fortress, you no longer need to win every argument. You only need to keep yourself intact. If you've ever been manipulated, if you've ever asked yourself, "What's wrong with me?" remember, nothing's wrong. You're simply learning to return to truth. You're here. Listening to this means you're not weak, but awakening. Please write in the comments, "I choose calm over chaos." Not just to say it, but to remind yourself that peace is never a reward. It's the right of those who see clearly. And if you want to keep building that fortress with me, where every Stoic principle becomes real strength in modern life, subscribe to Sovereign Stoic. Because the truth is, we can't avoid every manipulator, but we can learn to stand firm among them. Calmness is the only victory no one can take from you.